Okay, so AppsFlyer and Mistplay just released this report. I say just released this report. It's taken a little bit of calendar juggling to try and get both of us together to be able to record this. But I found it actually quite a fascinating report because from AppsFlyer's perspective, a lot of the user acquisition happens. We see the purchasing or the acquiring of users coming into the games. But what we don't see is what happens afterwards as much, and what companies can actually do to improve that leaky bucket situation. Because obviously, the more you throw at user acquisition is fantastic. You're going to get the users in. But if they churn immediately as they come into the game, then you have problems. So I thought it'd be really fun to grab you and have a conversation about why we put this report out in the first place and what it actually means to everybody, and actually dive into it. So let's start from the very beginning. Who are you and what do you do?
I'm Gabe Lewis. I am the director of client performance here at Mistplay. And I've been doing this a long time. I've been in mobile gaming now, I think, for over a decade. But with Mistplay and doing this whole loyalty kind of revolution for about 8 years. I was, boots on the ground in the original part where there was almost nobody else doing this and trying to just evangelize the idea. And fast forward 8 years now, and it's what everybody's talking about. Every index, every report, every conference has rewarded this and rewarded that, and it's the new ad network essentially.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
it's hot stuff right now.
So I'm not taking credit for, the explosion of this by any means. I'm just saying it was very cool to be, at the beginning of this and say, take out my phone and show people this idea of, hey, look, you can see where your ad is being shown, and here's what we're offering users as, a reward for playing your games and why we think it works, and converting UA managers one by one to now seeing it become a cascading boom to the fact that we're talking about loyalty reports and all this stuff, and working with folks like you to put out the message like this.
Because it's funny, I remember years and years and years ago, the whole sort of rewarded programs and everything used to be kind of somewhat shunned by user acquisition. It was like, yes, all right, but we're going to get traffic in, brilliant, but it's going to last until whatever the task is that you've put in the loyalty platform, and then everyone's going to churn and you'll be able to see like a drop off on day 30 or something. But it's changed quite a lot since then, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, the dynamics have changed, right? I joined this industry in like kind of the twilight of, where you could do like instant bursts. I don't know if you remember that, but you could just buy a bunch of users for, under $1 over a weekend to boost your rankings in the App Store. And then the App Store's changed the way it worked. You can't do that anymore, so nobody wanted to buy it. That's around when I joined, where you could still do that, but it was kind of fading off. And then what Mistplay was doing started to come on the scene, and this idea was starting to brew, and there was a couple other folks doing it too. And I was just like, that makes a lot of sense, because it's just this natural step forward where it's like, okay, it's incentivized, but we're incentivizing what a game developer actually wants and what they benefit from, which is users to stay around longer, to become engaged, to remain loyal, and that whole thing. So what the way I always framed it is we found a way, and others have found a way, to take games that are amazing, the best games in the world that users actually want to play, curate that, and then we add our own sort of rewarded layer on top of it. And I think that's really what made it palatable for people. And just once you actually get a feel for that, you see how it just kind of makes logical sense. And that's how you sort of move from that like shunned incent world to this rewarded loyalty, shiny new sort of image on it.
It's funny. It feels to me like it's almost replicating the App Store in a way, like with as a paid for App Store, like this kind of, you can give discoverability if you pay for it, which I think is quite an interesting concept, and it seems to work exceedingly well from what I've seen of the traffic, certainly.
Yeah, it's curation.
Right, let's dive into the report, and I'm sure we can cover a lot more of this as we go. There we go. Okay. So this is the lovely report. we can probably just skip through the first couple of pages because they're really explaining like how the report was put together and oh look, there I am, and the data that we're using. So let's jump through to the first sort of meaningful chart here. Here we go. What absolutely astounded me here was the fact that different genres have startlingly different loyalty rates. What do we think the logic behind different genres having very, very different loyalty scores is?
I think if you scratch the surface, you can really see it digs down into what users are actually looking for when they play. I like to start everything, when we look at this at the extremes. So take like the most hyper casual type of game you can imagine, and the players who are playing that, they're looking for quick release, quick satisfaction, and they churn. And then you go to the other end, the most sort of hardcore type of skill-based game where the game actually rewards you, and I use reward in a different sense here, but rewards you for being better at the game and having a more strategic view or increasing your skills. Those are naturally going to lend to higher loyalty. So think about retention and just more involvement in the game. And then, we see puzzle at the top there. I think puzzle is a broad category, but the best games in the world, the best puzzle games in the world, marry both those mechanics, right? They're giving you the satisfaction relatively quickly in small bite-sized levels, but also reward skill and progression and have this narrative woven in, and these beautiful mechanics and metas that keep you going. So it's really about marrying both of those things: the quick satisfaction of gaming and just beating a level, but also this long-term reward for actually doing better, progressing in a story, and being able to tackle more complex levels.
I guess some of it could also be based on the sort of user's persona, I guess, to a certain extent. I mean, you've got like the kind of people who are playing match games, perhaps more casual, jump into it every so often when they've got 10 minutes, they're waiting for a bus, whatever it may be. And, then you've got maybe some of the RPG players that are heavily committed and playing for days on end and sort of really trying to go through different achievements. So there could be, in terms of loyalty, there could well be a difference in the type of person who's interacting with the game.
Oh, absolutely. I think, when you talk about sort of loyalty and loyalty programs, it's those users who are really trying to get something out of the game and reinvest in that game, whether that's something like a battle pass or unique skins or items for the game. Users who play those kind of games are the ones who are definitely going to stick around longer and reinvest. Like you said, it's that persona. It's the people who are more invested in the game, who want to spend more time, that more gamer persona for that one specifically.
But it's interesting how they change per platform as well, though.
They do. They do a little.
Yeah, you can see a big difference between, tabletop jumped up there from the overall tabletops. Yeah, tabletops down here. But then on Android, tabletop jumps up to second place. On iOS, match is at second place, and tabletop is all the way down here. So there is a big difference there. Yeah, so it's really interesting, the sort of difference between iOS, Android, and the sort of split between the different genres. There's a hell of a movement between, when you're jumping from Android to iOS, you can see that tabletop is, it sort of comes up a hell of a long way, whereas match is much higher on iOS. What is this, just the sort of difference in the creation of games for the different platforms?
Yeah, I mean, we see some really clear differences in overall behavior, and believe me, I'd love to like rabbit hole on the behavioral psychology of both kinds of users in ways that are way beyond my expertise, because I think it is super interesting. But just some things that we see here is that on average, the IP spend is higher for iOS users, and you could maybe take that from them being higher end devices and having more disposable income. But the part that's really interesting is when you switch to Android, you find that there are users who are much more sticky in terms of their spend into single games. They'll spend around in one game for much longer, whereas iOS, you'll see people will spread their spend across more games more often. So that's going to change the dynamic here a little bit too. And
So
again,
hang on. Let's just go back over that. That's interesting. So the Android people would stick to specific games, whereas iOS they would spread between more. Is that?
That's what we're seeing in our research here. Yeah, we saw that.
Interesting.
There's this loyalty stickiness for users into individual games more pronounced on Android than on iOS. It's not all or nothing. It's just more pronounced.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got the genres. Let's have a look at where we stand on some of the metrics after. I mean, this is a lot post install, right? So we've got day 30 retention. So we're looking at, again, the sort of the top tiers here are really pushing very hard for first time purchase, which would make sense in terms of being able to judge with certain user acquisition restraints like scan and that kind of thing. Having a first time purchase happen very, very early within the game is going to mean that you can measure it much more effectively and see who's a payer and who's not. The day 30 spenders, that kind of thing, it's actually quite impressive on the puzzle side. You're starting to see like people actually sticking around in the game for quite some period of time and paying.
That's why it's the biggest genre in the world. I mean, you look at any sort of ranking, and it's just, I think it's the mass appeal of the genre. Just like you can be. We talked about personas before. You could be almost any persona of gamer, and then there's like a puzzle element that you will find and like, and that genre is so broad and far-reaching that it leaves a lot of room for those games to really, the ones who succeed, to really develop this really fun meta and just grab users and just push this stuff so hard.
I like that idea because it's true. You could actually be like a full-on hardcore gamer for PC and console, but you love to pick up your mobile and play a puzzle game, which is just completely sort of, completely separates from anything else.
Exactly, but that's it. I mean, those elements were in the games that probably got you to be a hardcore gamer, whether you grew up on Myst or Zelda,
sure.
or anything, right? There's those elements of things that just, puzzle has been a part of every massive game, and so they've been able to extract those bits and say, okay, there's little satisfying like things that you can just complete and get happy for. Like they've been able to package that in this fun mobile experience, and then have now evolved that in so many different ways.
Nice. What do you think some of the before we move on to the next bit, what do you think some of the key differentiators or components of loyalty are? When you're looking at it from a developer's perspective, what should they be looking at in order to improve loyalty?
Yeah, I think ultimately what users want to see is something that's personalized to them, that really is tailored to the things that they came to experience originally. You think of any loyalty program in the world, and it's rewarding you or giving you benefits for the things that you're already doing, and that you can reinvest back into that thing. So if you're talking about a game, it's, we talked about a little bit with like your RPG gamers. They're looking for things that they can reinvest back into that game. You're looking for something that gives a sense of accomplishment. So tiers and progression are very, 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 very key in that. And personalization, something that really responds to the way that you play and you progress, so that you can visualize it.
I guess one of the best real world examples of loyalty schemes as a whole, it has to be like Casino. The sort of the VIP schemes that they have, the loyalty aspects, exactly as you were saying, the multiple tiers to you have to work your way up the tiers to be the best level.
There's an ego part to it for sure. Yeah.
Massively. Yeah.
Being that VIP, being that number one, that status is huge for people, of course.
For sure. Interesting. Okay. Let's have a look at this next chart. What have we got here? This is exactly it. This is looking at the top 5 factors that influence. But this is influencing install and playtime though. So if we have a look at what we've got here, so on aggregate, The game looks and feels fun and intriguing. I mean, that's
step one.
But that's kind of natural anyway, isn't it? I mean, like if it doesn't, you're unlikely to play it.
Yeah, that's what I said. Step one, you got to have a game that actually like. You
Sure.
can add all the loyalty rewards elements in the world, but if it's a game that people don't want to play, then
yeah, it's not going to make any difference at all. Alignments between ads and gameplay. That's an interesting one because there's been multiple times that we've seen where ads have worked, but they haven't been connected to gameplay, which is somewhat misleading, or can be somewhat misleading.
That's why they got their name.
Yeah, but you're saying that there's a greater connection there between the ad and the actual game.
Yeah, I think ultimately over the long term, what you see is that, if you show people what you see is what you get. I think there's generally a lot more satisfaction when you come into that. You might get more people in the door up front when you sort of change it up. But ultimately what's going to influence their longer term playtime right here. So we've got install and playtime, to build that sort of score. It's the people who are going to feel like they got what they were looking for when they were originally sold on this.
I guess there's an element of sort of respect there, isn't there? Honesty and respect in terms of, you're providing me with exactly what I thought I was going to get, as opposed to I can't find this element in the game.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, listen, there's some people who are going to find something better than what they expected and all that. You're going to get people, but enough people are smart enough to realize that, like, okay, I'm being respected by this advertiser, by this developer, and they showed me something, and that yes, you gave me exactly what I was looking for when I got here. And again, that's sort of, you think about a sense of loyalty, like what makes you buy a product or come back to a product. You're like, okay, I feel like I've connected with this brand in that way.
Yeah. Okay, sentiment of user reviews. That makes complete sense. If everybody's very negative about the game, then you're not going to want to play it. Recommendations from friends. Again, same thing. Transparency of IAP and monetization. So obviously not trying to screw users over, really.
Yeah, and again, comes down to like, hey, I care about this game. I want to reinvest in it because it's helping me progress. It's helping me get something out of it. I think a lot of the themes that we're talking about, we're going to see repeated over and over again because they make the most sense, because that's really what drives people, deeper in.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's all fairly logical in what it's saying there, for sure.
A lot of things are when you boil them down. It's fun.
Yeah. I know, but turning around and saying, look, just make a good game doesn't really help, does it? It's
yeah, for sure. Listen, if it was that easy, everyone would do it. But I mean,
exactly.
You got to find the thing that clicks.
So we got okay. This is interesting. This is a split between spenders and non-spenders, looking at the different functions there that we just talked about.
Yeah.
So they, again, very similar in what they're looking for within the game, and the types of approach to things there with the spenders. Yeah. Possibly even more so in a lot of cases.
The one to call out is where it shifts to the other side, is that one with the recommendations from friends. So it's like, okay, you're a spender, you're a little less like worried about what other people are doing. You know what you want. You've got
slightly more so on the App Store reviews.
Yeah,
it's interesting. Okay, quick split between personas. We haven't really been into any of the personas in depth as to know what exactly they are. But there's not a huge difference between the numbers there either. They're all fairly even on what they're looking
for. The breakdowns of each one, a game that looks good, a game that, people review well. I think that's a pretty far-reaching, category that's just going to appeal to anybody, essentially.
Yeah. And then looking at it, a split wow. That's quite interesting, actually. There's sort of quite a difference between Android. That's quite a difficult one to jump to, isn't it? I mean, the fact that 70% of Android are looking for a game that feels fun and intriguing, it's kind of, I'm surprised that iOS isn't slightly higher on that one as well. But that's interesting. The alignment between the ads and gameplay is possibly even more important on Android.
Yeah, I mean, it might say something about the level of gamer and what they're sort of, what they're attuned to, and that kind of thing. It sort of lends to a little bit of what I said before about the stickiness in a single game, and really feeling like, hey, I'm coming. I'm a gamer. I'm coming to play something here, and just enjoy that, and trying to find the thing that aligns with what I'm looking for, rather than this like sort of broad spread.
Okay. What do players want to reward their loyalty? So tangible rewards, extra in-game resources, exclusive in-game items, and VIP events. All makes complete sense. What have you got any examples? I mean, I guess I can think of like a daily bonus, that kind of thing, for a tangible reward, like giving something back to somebody every time that they log into the game. I think is always a nice approach to things. Extra in-game resources, giving people the ability to continue to play for a bit longer, never hurts. Exclusive in-game items. Is that something unique to that game, or what do we mean by that one, do you think?
So I think it is unique to that game. Exactly. It's the idea that you're playing a game and you're going to be investing in that game. You should be getting something out of it that other people who aren't putting that level of investment aren't going to get.
And that perhaps you couldn't get in another game as well. Like,
yeah, exactly.
It's something unique. Yeah. And VIP events makes complete sense for considering most games that generate a decent level of return are funded by a very small section of players. It's very important to sort of cater to those players as well.
Yeah.
How long this one's actually really interesting. How long have mobile gamers been playing their favorite game? So we've got under a week 3%, under a month 10%. Under a year is 38%, and more than a year is 49%, which is actually really interesting. But I suppose when you look at a lot of the sort of top 100 releases, I think we did a bit of analysis on this, I want to say semi-recently, but probably beginning of the year-esque. We sort of found that anything in the top 100 hadn't come into the top 100. There were very few that popped into the top 100 over the last year.
Yep.
So, taking that as an example, it's kind of unlikely that people are going to have been playing their favorite game for less than a year.
For me, as like, when you think about mobile gaming and you just think about how sort of easy and casual it can be, to think about games that are actually able to capture your attention for a year plus, it's like that's what really separates the the good from everybody else. And like you said, that top 100 is hard to break into. We look at it all the time as well, and you just see those games that have been around for years that just hold people for so long. And these are the ones that really put a lot of time into developing the loyalty and elements of their game, things that reward continuous engagement, continuous things that keep people going. And that's where also Mistplay tries to come in also, as we're adding like that layer on top of that to drive people deeper into these games. We know, if you find something you like, you're going to want to keep doing it as long as it keeps feeling good for you. And as long as you keep feeling like you're getting what you want out of that game. So, it's the game developer's job to make something that is sticky. And then when we come back and talk about, rewarded elements, what can we do to support that and just elongate that as much as possible?
It always baffles me with games like Summoner's War, for instance. And they're just celebrating 11 years. 11 years of people, people have played for 11 years. I've been playing Raid for the last 6 years. It's incredible that these games are just sort of almost living and breathing now. It's sort of, and they become daily routine. It's I think it's incredible that the effort that people put into playing games, and I know this firsthand.
Yeah, it's amazing what you can do when you can create something that's that engaging, but also so accessible to pick up and put down. You don't have, you don't have to play it for hours a day like you would some console or PC games. You can get out and play 10 minutes, 20 minutes a day, but you're still making that progress. You're still doing it, and there's still like so much going on being added to that game, enriched, new events, new styles, new screens, new characters, the whole thing.
Yeah,
Um,
completely.
yeah, keeping people going.
It's quite a thing. Okay, then we look at loyalty programs and tiered loyalty programs in particular, and looking at how important they are for retaining users long term. We can see here that for spenders, it's important is the dark, not neutral, and then not important is the smallest proportion there. But I guess that stands to reason, really. If you're invested in a loyalty program, you're likely looking to get to the top of that loyalty program or
It's why we're in
a
the
ladder.
business. It's why we're in the business we're in. It's because it is important to the majority of people, and because people really do feel like they're getting what they want out of it, and seeing that doing more will reward them more. If it's just
Hmm.
this baseline flat, a system, then sure, it'll work for some people, and it'll be okay. But those who are really dedicated in any walk of life, in any stretch, I don't want to get too philosophical here, but if you can just see, you can see your path in front of you and know that the effort you put in will be, rewarded proportionally. You're gonna put that effort in, and you're gonna have a clear idea. And those who want to excel are gonna work hard.
But it's also a retention device in the fact that it stops people from looking at other games.
Yeah.
Because of the amount of investment. If you've got to a certain loyalty tier in your game, you're not going to start playing another game because you're kind of you've already got to a certain status in the game that you're playing.
Well, that's it. I mean, that's why it behooves game developers to work closely with, any sort of loyalty program, and make sure that they're doing that to find that sticky point and say, okay, like if I can hook a user to this point and get them to, this status, whatever it is, and that's when I know that the majority of people are going to be like, all right, I'm in, like I'm locked in. Then you've unlocked this level of retention, this like LTV growth that's going to carry you so far.
Is that where it makes sense, do you think, to sorry, I'm just thinking about like larger developers where they have multiple different apps. And if you're running a loyalty program, it's probably better to do it a sort of overarching company-wide loyalty program rather than an app specific. Because if you want to cross promote people to different games, because they've been spending with your brand, let's say, moving them from game to game, they'll still be the same loyalty level. But then I guess to the same point, is also quite dangerous, sort of moving a payer or a VIP payer from one game to another game because they may not see it in the same way.
Yeah, we've actually talked to a lot of people about that kind of thing. It's almost a simple concept, but really hard to do for the exact reasons you said. You have to be really smart about who you're trying to move and when.
Yeah,
right? It's like, you don't want to move your biggest spenders unless you've really figured out that they're done spending. And that's a hard thing to figure out.
for sure.
So I think there's lots of people who have tried that, lots of outside vendors who have tried that, lots of people who have tried to do it for their own studios. And I haven't seen too many versions of that work because, again, you're just worried about shifting things around and disrupting the dynamic too much.
Well, like I was saying before, if you've got such a small percentage of your player base that is your top spending players and producing your revenue, when you start to play with them too much and start to move them from one game to another, if the game that you move them to doesn't resonate with them for whatever reason, they could churn completely. So it is a very precarious situation.
I mean, it is, and everybody's playing with fire with that anyway. Anyone who has ads in their game is playing with fire with that, right? So
Yeah, for sure.
you've already got something built in that's kind of drawing people away from your game. So you got to figure out how to balance that. And yeah, I do think that's a huge area of opportunity, is figuring how to like strategically shift your players around within your portfolio.
Yeah, I do see. We've seen over the past couple of years that retention has been way more in focus than it ever was before. It was all about driving users into your game before, but I guess as prices have changed and user acquisition has become a bit harder to do in the first place, it kind of opens up okay, let's work at how we can retain our players in a better way and how we can monetize the players that we already have. And I think then it really does pay to start looking at how you do cross promotion as a whole. Which players are you cross promoting from app to app, and why, and what's the motivation behind it, and it becomes it becomes a very interesting conversation, and how you automate that approach becomes an even more sort of precarious conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, even just talking about it, the wheels are turning. I mean, like it's you work with, people who specialize in loyalty. We do. And there's just ways that all the user touch points that you have, you can figure out the messaging and the timing to try and just encourage people, nudge them in the right direction. Again, we talked about it above. It's people want something that aligns with their interests, aligns with what they're expecting. So you just got to figure out a way to present the message to the users you're already connected with, and just sort of lead the horse to water. Can't make it drink. Just sort of give them that option, and I think there's a lot of opportunity there.
Definitely.
It's a whole other.
How many people, mobile gamers, have referred to as their favorite mobile game? How many people, mobile games?
This is about referrals. So referring their friends and stuff.
Okay, interesting. Right. So, on aggregate, none. 1 to 2 is like the largest part. It's interesting to see that 2% here is 11 plus, which is like that's bringing a lot of new users into a game. Full stop.
Yeah, those are probably those few games who really nailed it, like nailed their referral programs, and was just like, we are going to make sure these users feel good about doing it.
I remember back in the day when everything, when we sort of first started with a lot of this, it was all on Facebook Canvas, and it was all about organic growth in terms of virality and everything else. Yeah. So it was all about people referring other people to play the game, and that was user acquisition back then. It's changed somewhat since.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I mean, listen, if you unlock that, I mean, that's the thing, that 2% there is what everyone is dying for. So if there's room to unlock that with, incentives, with rewards, whatever it is, to make it a more appealing process to like meaningfully refer your friends, that's your user. That could become your user acquisition strategy again.
That one's even more interesting. The fact that when you filter it by spenders, you're looking at 6%, which is, I mean, if each user refers 11 plus other users, that's really quite cool. Interesting. Okay. And then if we start to look at devices, is there a split between... Ooh, that's interesting in itself. So we're looking at Android as being 7% for the 11 plus, whereas iOS is 2%. Wow. I really thought that would be the other way around. That's interesting.
Now, why did you think that would be the other way around? Not to turn this back on you.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I just have this view as iOS as being the sort of luxury brand in terms of devices. And those people would be more likely to share. But I suppose in reality, maybe it's not those people who would be more likely to share it.
Yeah, that's funny. I asked because that's exactly what I was thinking. It's like, you got the luxury aspect of iOS, but it's like Android is almost, because it's not that luxury bit, it's a bit more community. It's a bit more massive.
Yeah, share what we're playing. Yeah, that's interesting though. I like that. That's a very useful takeaway. Okay, and then we dive into some of the monetization metrics. So let's have a quick look here. Share of spenders on day 30. So we're breaking down by genre again.
So I think this was alluded to before, where you just see, I mean, it's a more luxury product. It's people with more disposable income. You are going to see a higher share of spenders across the board, mostly in some categories.
It's not as night and day as it used to be, though. It's actually sort of leveled out somewhat. I suppose some of the genres are still very much in favor of iOS, but when you're looking at puzzle and that kind of thing, it's actually not that different, is it?
Yeah, it's not. I wonder how much of that is related to the changes in, like, App Store dynamics and scan and ATT and all that stuff, over the past couple of years. Whereas, like, prior to that, I think like you said, it was much more night and day.
I'd love revenue numbers to be on here, and I'd love it to be like number of users as well, like split of audience, because generally speaking, iOS is way smaller number of devices than Android, but they perform better. So it'd be interesting to sort of see those splits between it. Fascinating. Let's have a quick breakdown between. Okay, so we've got the data for 23 and the data for 24. So puzzle's kind of grown over that time anyway, so we know that one. Tabletop. Okay, tabletop's come down a bit. That's interesting. Okay. RPG remains pretty much the same. Strategy, casino. Okay, and let's have a look at iOS, see how that differs. Again, puzzles had a lot of dramatic growth recently. Tabletop, similar. RPG's actually gone down a bit on iOS. That's interesting. I wonder if that's a somewhat visible aspect of Scan coming through there, that they've sort of had to move away to a certain extent. Casino's operating very, very similar. Action is way more iOS, which is interesting. Okay, what else we got? Time to first purchase, days post install. So what are we looking at? Puzzle, as we've already talked about, is like almost immediate, which is incredible. RPG, very, very similar. Simulation, very similar. Casino, they're pretty on it. And then it starts to tail off there a bit. I mean, like as we were saying before, if without an early test purchase, sort of having something that is offered that is clear and inherent value, offering for after you've established the sort of the cost of in-app currency, so that the user understands the value of the very, very cheap package that you're showing them. It's essential to do that on iOS. Certainly, it's essential to do that early on for Scan in order to be able to get the postbacks and everything else. So it's very interesting to see a lot of the genres that function well via Scan are actually doing that, and you can see that they're doing it.
And that's why they're functioning well. Exactly.
Yeah, 100%. Number of games spent in per week by IAP spenders. So sort of split of the number of games that spenders are playing. That's interesting. That's very interesting. Yeah. Okay. So the majority of people who spend are only spending in. Yeah, so you've got to really try and convince people that, hey, you need to be spending in my game. That's interesting. And then it's
when we compare that Android to iOS is where you'll see like that real difference, because you were looking aggregate. But if we see this, Android spenders, you got 58% spending in one game per week, and then iOS changes a bit dramatically. So this is what I was saying.
Yeah.
You got your stickier like single game players on Android.
And this is what we were talking about earlier, and I guess the higher end devices end up having more disposable income, where it's possible to spend that. But then Android's catching up with devices some of the high end premium devices now are not far off, or possibly more expensive than iOS devices.
Yeah. But that pool is much bigger for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Factors that contribute to post-purchase regret.
Ooh.
Interesting. Unexpectedly high cost. Why should it be? I'm not entirely sure why it should be unexpectedly high, because you kind of have a purchase amount that you're going for. And anyway, misaligned advertising around value. Yeah, I mean, that kind of makes sense.
I would tie those first two together pretty tightly, where it's just like, okay, this is the premium thing I'm purchasing. It's going to get me a lot further into my game. You buy it and you realize I'm still stuck at this.
It's meaningless. Yeah, it's 3 energy.
Yeah,
no, it's kind of like I was saying before about the sort of test purchase. Is almost, if you haven't conveyed the sort of commodity cost of the resources that you're selling, it's very difficult for the user to then understand the value and if the package that you're showing them is good value or not. So I guess that's kind of in line with what I was saying there about how you really need to establish that commodity cost.
Yep.
Limited utility or impact in the game. I mean, that kind of adds on to what we were saying there. If you're purchasing some item that you can only use in one specific area or something, that could turn people off for sure. Peer pressure or external influence.
That's
The only thing I can think of there is like streamers, maybe something like that.
You purchased the wrong thing.
Have not regretted making an IAP. Oh, 20%. That's impressive. Yeah.
That's pretty good. I mean, like, if a fifth of all your users have no buyer's remorse, I mean, you're doing pretty decent. But I think the rest of those are pretty clear, which is just like, hey, if you're gonna be enticing users to purchase, make sure they're getting the value out of it. And again, like, for obvious reasons, the themes are pretty clear here. And when you think about loyalty and what you're doing, right? It's
for sure.
giving those users a sense of progression, giving a sense of like usefulness, tangible rewards, a tiered, all the tiered aspect. It's really about giving, making sure that they're getting back what they put in. And so those
it's kind of what we've been, there's a theme underlying here that we've been saying about like honesty, transparency, like really showing the user that you're trustworthy.
Most people are not idiots, and especially the ones who are invested enough to spend money. I mean, those are people who generally thought it through enough, and that's where you have to align like outcomes with expectations. And so I think it's not unexpected to see some of these numbers.
Yeah. That's interesting. Okay. What else have we got here? Retention day 30. Okay, yeah. So we're seeing that iOS is sort of really across the board there has a higher retention on day 30 rate than Android. Fair. Average sessions per user per day. I think sessions can be semi-misleading in terms of like there can be all sorts of reasons for having multiple sessions. The game could crash.
And all you need is one. All you need is one to trigger the retention. So
exactly, yeah. So I kind of prefer that one. I think that's it.
I think we're still seeing that clear difference where it's just like you do have the more premium users, from that respect on.
Yeah, that are more likely to stay with the game that they install. That's for sure. Yeah. Okay. Factors that keep players coming back to their favorite mobile game. All right, I like this.
Yeah.
Daily streak and engagement bonus. I mean, that's got to be one of the biggest. Like a daily login bonus, something like that, has to be a huge one of keeping people coming back every day to try and achieve something on day 30. I mean, that's ultimate goal.
That's worked on me.
Yeah, me. Engaging in-game events and challenges. I mean, LiveOps we know is a massive thing, keeping players engaged. Sort of changing up the gameplay mechanics because you can have sub-meta games through LiveOps channels now, which are semi-easy to do in comparison to how they used to be. You don't need to hard code them in the game anymore. That opens up all sorts of things that the LiveOps team can start to run and different ideas that they can throw into the game, which really opens up the potential for retention. I mean, there's a lot more that you can generate from that.
Yeah, and people go ham on this. I mean, like you play some games and like you finish a level and you've got 5 different meters that are accumulating because you're getting gems and flames and keys and hearts, and then
the only thing I would say is to be very careful that you don't just confuse the hell out of the user.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, like these go hard, and you're down a rabbit hole of one of those things. You're like, oh, yeah, what am I supposed to be doing again? Come back to finish an actual level. But it's interesting how people are really experimenting with that and playing with that. And I think again, there's like elements to collaborate within the game, but also with, rewards and loyalty programs like Mistplay, where it's just, collaborating on aligning messaging, both sides having touch points with the users and being able to communicate that these things are happening and what you should be focusing on, how and when. And I think that will help sort of, we're talking about the biggest factors that get people coming back to the game. Those are things that we can leverage and do together, which is, I think, super powerful.
Frequent content updates. I mean, this is a huge one. I was saying earlier about likes of Summoners War, 11 years.
Right.
They are constantly changing up the game. They're constantly changing the mechanics of different characters within the game, that kind of stuff, which keeps people engaged, which keeps people having to find different ways of then beating bosses and that sort of stuff. So it's living and breathing. It keeps people coming back. It keeps people finding different ways of doing things, which I think is ever so important with, longevity of games.
Yeah, as by contrast, just very funny. I was seeing something about retro. I read a lot about retro gaming, and people are like, "Well, how did people used to patch games?" Back before the internet, and people are like, you kind of didn't. You just the game was buggy, and you lived with it, and that was it. And you just sort of you went with it, and that was fine. And sometimes it became an inside joke, and that was it. And now it's like we've got these living, breathing games that are just being updated all the time, and all this constantly thing. You release a game, it's kind of half baked, and over the course of years, it becomes an actual full game. It's fun and dynamic.
Innovative new gameplay and features. I mean, that kind of fits in with all the rest of them as well. It makes sense. Competitive multiplayer or social gameplay, again, makes complete sense in the right circumstances. I think you've got to be careful you can't just slap in multiplayer and hope for the best. There's got to be reason for, putting a clan in, for instance. There has to be a reason for doing it. You have to be able to gain something as a group together to work towards in order for it to work. Customization options for characters and gameplay. Skins are probably one of the best that I can think of for that one.
Absolutely. I think the social one is an interesting one, like the last one that you just sort of went over. Like we didn't talk about that much today, but it's a big one. And I think you nailed it, which is you have to figure out how to do it and not just slap it on as like, hey, add a friend and forget about it. It's like you have to actually, encourage people to do something together, encourage that engagement, because if you can get both sides working together, it increases that whole refer a friend, get up to that 11 plus referrals and stuff like that. If there's something
but it also massively enhances retention. If you have people, and there's an element, I've been playing for a long time, there's an element of pressure within clans as well to perform at certain times, at certain events. So I think there's like that brings me back to the game. If ever I've churned, or if ever I don't call it churning, I call taking a break, basically. If I ever get to that point, I have, I'll see on Discord or whatever, a couple of people sort of going, okay, we need to push now, and it's all right, back in. And I think that's a hell of a retention tool, because again, it's you're getting the usage of push notifications, but not as part of your game, and you're getting other people that the user is interacting with to be messaging them to say, hey, come back into the game. I mean, what more could you want from that?
That's it. You're more touch points with the user, more messaging, more like, getting into their consciousness. And again, you're leveraging your own players to do that.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, let's jump down to this one, see what we've got here. Types of personalization players want in their mobile games. I'm going to jump straight to spenders on this one. I'm intrigued.
Makes sense.
Adaptive gameplay based on skill level. Okay, that's quite... I feel like that's quite puzzle focused, but that makes sense. Personalized challenges, quests, dynamic storylines that react to player choices, tailored in-game rewards. That's always a big one for me, because I always feel like if I'm paying within a game, and if I'm paying a lot within a game, I would like something back which is proportional to what I'm spending, not the same bonus that I would get if I was a non-spender. Sorry.
This is where curating and knowing your player and knowing your personas, like this is where it pays off, right? These are all the personalization elements. People
100%.
People love a personalized experience. like you have to invest in knowing your players and understanding what they want. Take the time to understand who they are, talk to them, figure out who they are, and what they actually need and want to see and would feel good about getting. Like I said at the beginning, I've done sales. Like some of the best question is like, what do you need from me? What do you need from me to make this work? It's the same thing to your players. What do you need to see from us as a game, as a gamer to make this work, and understand that and build it? Easy to say, hard to do, but I mean, too many people don't do it.
Personalized offers based on purchase history. See, this can be a good one and a bad one. Like it's it's definitely a double-edged sword, because if you have some games, and some games that I've played in the past have adjusted. So if I up my spend gradually, so I start off with $1, move to $5, move to $10, move to $20, the catalog for the store sort of changes in line with that. So I don't have the ability to purchase like a $5 package, even though I might want to. I can't. So they kind of push you up to the point where you're sort of, well, I don't really want to purchase anymore. So you have to be very, very careful with that as a developer, I feel.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you don't want to, it's all a psychology. I mean, part of it's a psychology, but you like encourage people to go beyond and beyond, but you don't want to cut off that floor.
Yeah.
Right. And then,
of course. Yeah.
Then, people no option. And then, then you've essentially forget the psychology, but you force them. You now physically force them into that corner.
Exactly. And now we're at final thoughts. I really found the fact that 49% have been paying their sort of favorite game for longer than a year. That makes sense when you really sort of dig in and think about it. But when you just hear it as a statement, it's like, what? It's kind of a long-term thing.
And then it makes you think about the games that you've been playing and realize how long you've been playing them. I've had that a couple times recently where it's just
that's kind of scary in itself.
Yeah, I didn't realize that like I've actually been doing this for 6 months, a year, almost daily, and just like, okay, time goes by fast. But yeah, when you stop and think about it, you can see how 49% of people would also be in the same situation.
But that's one of the loops that increases player loyalty anyway, is really sort of being part of that routine, being part of the player's life. You're there, they should be opening it, or you need to convince them to open it every day, twice a day, whatever it may be, in order to get specific bonuses and really interact with things within the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's like people who do crossword puzzles or the Wordle. Like it's the same idea, right? It just became a part of your morning routine as you drink your coffee.
Exactly.
And you do it, and the same thing with the mobile game. It's all right. I'm gonna check in, get my daily streak, get my thing, do it, play a couple levels, and then you're off with your day, and you kind of forget about it the next morning. But then you realize a year has gone by.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute blast. I love the report. I'm gonna spend some more time on it. But it's nice to. I find with these things, it's nice to actually read them, not just sat on my own looking at my computer, because I generally get bored and I sort of go off and do something else. So it's nice to actually talk through it and have a conversation about it as you're going through the report. So definitely need to do this more often.
It was a pleasure. Super fun. Appreciate the chat, and yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right.